This is episode 10 of Standing Out. Standing Out is a remarkable interview style podcast with the intention to highlight women and men making outstanding contributions in their field. Today, I'd like to welcome Yasine Armstrong and Katie Rice. Yasine is the co-founder and COO of Baby Page. Baby Page is an online platform that helps busy parents track their children's milestones and create a modern baby book. Yasine has over 12 years experience in strategic marketing, communications, and startup organizations. She most recently serves as the director of entrepreneurial programs for the Central New Mexico Community College Stimulus Center. And Katie is the co-founder and CEO of Baby Page. She has over 10 years of experience in venture capital, and her previous experience also includes strategy, consulting, and engineering. She's on the boards of ABQID, a startup accelerator, Hotpreneurs, and Corando Ventures Forum. And she spearheaded the ABQID Ski Lift Pitch, a startup competition held at Taos Ski Valley. Katie has a Bachelor of Science in Engineering from MIT, and her MBA is from the University of Chicago. Welcome, Katie and Yasine. I'm so excited to have you both here.
Thanks so much for having us. We're excited.
Thanks. So as I'm looking at both your backgrounds, and feel free to both chime in, I'm so interested to know let's start with Katie. How, Katie, you went from MIT engineering background to startups.
Sure. Well, I think you'll find a lot of MIT grads are in the startup entrepreneurial ecosystem. So I actually have a lot of friends and former classmates in this world. And I've been I started out in engineering and then transitioned into the business world, first into consulting. So I worked in management consulting for a while, and then I moved from New York to Albuquerque to work for a startup that was acquired. Mm-hmm. But it was a spin out of UNM. And then I started networking with the business community here and the tech transfer community here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I got to know the small but significant investment circle here. And I started working for a venture capital fund, and I've been working there for over 10 years. So I've been helping startups. I've been on a lot of committees and advising startups for a long time. So I've always had the urge to do something on my own. And then this idea came along, and it was one of those where we'll talk more about this, but it was a product that I wanted. We're both excellent examples of our target customer at Baby Page. So it was basically it was born when I was looking for a product that I wanted to have to use, and I couldn't find a good solution. Mm-hmm. And I knew enough about it to realize that the business opportunity existed to build something really great. And Yasine is one of the first people I told about the opportunity. She also, thought it would be a product she'd love to use, and she also has experience in startups. So she kind of jumped on the opportunity in that way as well.
Isn't that so interesting? I think so many startups and so many entrepreneurs start in a place where they are the target market. And right. I think, doesn't that give you just so much insight into how to market, how to brand, where these people are, and all of that?
I think that's a great point. And I think the really interesting thing about Baby Page, and that we saw that as a real problem for ourselves, and both having worked in the tech industry, I think initially it was like, well, of course there's got to be a really elegant solution to kind of solve this for us. So we went looking for it, both of us, independently. And, we did a ton of research on our own, thinking, hey, we're both in this startup community. There's got to be this tech company out there doing this. And when we found out there wasn't, knowing that we both needed it, then we started talking to our other moms and other parents and saying, hey, what are you using? What have you found? And really the answer was, I haven't really found anything, but what you're suggesting sounds great.
I would love that.
Yeah, and I would love that. I'd love to use it. So, the customer discovery was not only each other, but obviously talking to our networks of friends and busy parents and other moms to really realize this is a huge opportunity.
And then back to our previous experience, and then, my MIT background, quite frankly, we also within our networks know enough developers and know that community well enough to realize we knew who we were looking for to build a team, to include the people who would actually build the product.
Right.
So we had a very specific idea of the type of developers and designers that we wanted, and so we had the kind of network and capacity to work on that as well.
I think that's a fair point, Katrina. So one of the things that I think we bring to the table is not only is it a good idea, and we have some real thoughts around the design because we're the target market, like what gets us interested, but because of the backgrounds that we had in working with tech folks, we actually understood who we'd be looking for and who would get what we were trying to build. Because you'll see some solutions out there that maybe the design's really great, but the technical functions don't work, or the design's not great, but the tech stuff works. Okay. So how do you get both? And we were able to pull together a team that can do that.
Let's talk about that team element for a second, but particularly in startups where, you have a very finite amount of resources of both time and money. And oftentimes I hear, if you don't have the right team, it's not happening regardless of the idea. And so for the audience who's maybe building a team or looking at their team, is this the right group of people? What sort of tips do you have, or what do you think you did that was really good? Like, how'd you get such an awesome team?
So I think that's just a really great point. And it's something, you'll hear both of us talk about. If I look back at my experience in venture capital, I learned early on, there are some really great ideas and great products out there and great companies that fail. And the number one reason tends to be the team. Mm-hmm. And it's not always, sometimes it's just not the right people. And often it's that the right people don't work well together. And you see that over and over. And it was honestly really tough for me at the beginning, the first few years working on startups in VC, because I would see these, in some cases they were technologies that could save lives and change the world, and it would flop, And then there were hugely successful deals I worked on. And if the one common factor was the people involved, because you always say whatever you set out in your pitch deck or, whatever you say you're going to do, the one thing we know is that won't happen, So you can't tell the future, right? So you can project all you want. You can, look back at your experience, and build models, but whatever model you build will not be exactly what happens, but some version of that will happen. The markets will change. There'll be competitors you didn't see coming, just technology changes. So then, what tends to happen is the teams that can roll with that, both in working together and evolving the product well enough or pivoting, tend to win. So we always say we want A+ teams. We'd rather have an A+ team and a B+ idea than vice versa.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah.
So and in our case, I came to Yasine first because I targeted her because I know her. Their history is always good. Okay. I learned in business school, interviews are really tough. You tend to get to know in an interview if you like someone, but you don't really know how good they'll be at whatever job you want them for until you tend to pick. Yeah, it's hard to tell from a resume. But I had a lot of history with Yasine, so I know I enjoy working with her. I know she's really smart. I know I can trust her. That was really meaningful to me. Mm-hmm. And then together we thought, we need to find someone to build. Well, at first we thought perhaps one person could build the functionality and the look and feel of the site.
How many does it take?
And we quickly figured out that
it takes a lot more.
So then
even with our direction.
They tend to be different people,
right,
the people who design the look and feel, the experience, and then the functionality, of course. So we found the person who, our CTO, is someone I've known for a while, for several years, and I know he's just brilliant. I mean, he's just got a lot of experience both building software and building companies. So I targeted him, and then we were left, we really needed a top-notch designer, and that was someone who was recommended to us. And we spent some time with him before we brought him on, but that one was, we clicked with him. We realized we really, we respect everything the little trials we did, and he designed early on. He did a really great job. And he seemed very passionate. He got our idea. He's actually the only one who's not a parent on our co-founder team, but he got it. He proved to us in a bit of a trial phase that he totally got it, and he's very passionate about the idea. So
that's great.
Well, I think the other element too about team, and this is one of the things that I think we both have experienced personally, but also seen in companies that have failed, is that within the team, right, in startups, you have to make decisions quickly, and some of them are really hard. And so you also have to have a high level of trust in your teammates, but you also have to be able to have the ability to say, hey, stop for a minute. I think we need to think about it from this angle. And sometimes that can be hard, especially when you're working with people that you have a history with or you have deep relationships with. But the startups that I've definitely, like, some people will say, don't go into business with your friend or your family.
Right.
I actually would say go into business with your friend as long as you're both very clear about not only what you bring to the table, but that you have clear lines of communication to say, hey, Katie, can we stop for a minute and talk about this? Or, hey, Yasine, I really want us to consider doing this. And being able to keep that very professional and keep that out of the personal. Super hard. I don't say it's like incredibly easy, but I think if you're really aware of that up front, it really helps.
Well, and I think you save a lot of time. I mean, it doesn't always work, but having that history, so just background on the person, it saves time because again, there's a level of respect and trust, and you can make decisions just like Yasine described. You tend to do it more quickly and efficiently because you trust the person's opinion. You can delegate very quickly. You don't always have to ask permission, but you can freely discuss. So I tend to think history is actually really, really helpful. I know, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes people, especially if it's like your spouse, I've heard that's really difficult, but there are examples of that working beautifully.
Yeah.
So I think the history element helps a ton.
We have some friends, they're a husband-wife team, and they have this really great sort of boundary. And that is, if they are not working, if it's personal time for both of them and one brings up work but the other doesn't want to talk about it, they simply say not now. Conversation ends and it gets discussed when
I feel like we do that, Yas and I, a little bit, because we're really good friends, you can probably tell, and we have kids who
probably play dates.
We do, who are the same. Well, I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and Yas has 2-year-old twins, so the little ones, we get them together as much as we can because it's great. And I feel like we do that. We've never said it that formally, but I feel like we have a lot to talk about outside of work as well.
Right.
And sometimes we just don't. We have updates on Baby Page, but sometimes I feel like I've said that to you before. I've said, no, not now.
Let's talk about this later. Right.
I just can't. That part of my brain's not on this very moment. So we do it all the time, and for us, it works really well.
It does definitely seem to work. But I think, again, I don't think it's been formal, but I think because we both approach it that way, like, that's right, we're a gymnastics class. Let's just play with our kids at gymnastics,
Stop telling me about the customer acquisition strategy you just came up with.
And there's some mom research right here.
A lot of access to one another. So sometimes we do throw out ideas over a play date or, over coffee or whatever.
Yeah. Well, one of the hardest things I think for newbie entrepreneurs usually isn't about the technical skill side of things. It's more about the personal side, that ego side, that voice that says, am I good enough? Do I know how to do this? I'm wondering if either of you experience that or still experience it and how you kind of overcome it.
We have it all the time, Katrina.
Highs and lows. I mean, it's such an interesting ride. It's honestly the most fun I've ever had working. But it's the hardest thing I've ever done as well, because you do have that fear every day, like, oh no, what if everybody hates my product? Oh no, what if it crashes? Oh no, what if, we just launched our beta a couple weeks ago, and there was this, it took a long time. There was a lot of back and forth deciding, should we pull the trigger? Is it time? Because it's not perfect, but it's a beta.
Right.
Yeah.
So, there's that fear of like, oh no, what if we perfect it for another 2 weeks? But then, you need that customer feedback. So the highs and lows are huge. And I think everybody goes through that. I think for that reason, it helps for me to have the co-founders who respect me and I respect them, so I can show them that side when I have a day when I'm really worried. They've all seen it. They know.
We all have that.
And I know they have that as well. We have days where we think, but we kind of pull each other up. It's helpful to have the entrepreneurial ecosystem and other CEOs, other startup co-founders to talk to and share that experience with, because it can be a very lonely process. I knew just with my experience, I didn't want to do it alone. I didn't want to, because there was the thought I could have outsourced. I could have never talked to Yasine. I could have said, okay, then it'll be cheaper. I won't have 2 people. I'll just be the one, and then I'll outsource some developers, wherever, or I'll pay an agency. I could have gone down that route, and I knew I didn't want to do that. Because I've seen, it's a lonely process. It's just difficult. It's difficult to pull off, and it's difficult emotionally. And I knew, especially in my case, I targeted Yasine because I knew she'd be perfect for this. I know that, she brings a lot to the table operationally and marketing wise, and just as a serial entrepreneur herself. But I, honestly, I don't think I would have done it if I didn't have her in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it because I have seen it, it's hard to be a solo entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I definitely think like I have seen entrepreneurs who do go at it alone, and building the team is the hardest thing for them, because I actually think their ego gets in the way. And those are ones that oftentimes, when I was working for a venture capital firm, if I was able to develop good enough rapport, I could say to them, hey, no matter how amazing you are, it's never going to go anywhere because you don't have the next layer of support, and you need to continue building that. And some people hear that message and get it, and some people say, no, thank you. Right? Like, just trampled all over my ego. And so I think that's one of the things too that I've learned in doing a few companies, is that I don't want to work with someone who's in it just for kind of the ego and the recognition. Because especially when you launch, you get a lot of excitement. Right? But the proof is in, for us, the number of customers, the number of users, and what our revenue looks like. And I think that's one of the things that Katie and I really keep ourselves grounded about. It's great to get accolades and get support, and for people to, say great things about us, one-offs. Mm-hmm. But our proof is going to be in, being able to grow and scale our company with customers.
Right. What would you say? Both of you mentioned entrepreneurship is a roller coaster, day to day, week to week. How do you each recover from a tough day?
That's a great question. I drink wine. No,
yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think we're both moms of little kids.
Yeah.
So we're in this interesting situation in that we're building a product for moms. So we think about kids and moms all day long. But for me, I go home and I play with my kids. And if on those days where I am worried or stressed out, I try very hard to have at least some time at home where I'm not looking at my phone.
Yeah.
Really, and it's hard to do in an hour. If it's a really, if it's been more like a tough week, it's really good to take a whole day. And I won't say that I don't look at my phone all day, but I do things. I'm really outdoorsy, and I love hiking and camping. So what's just the thing that helps the most, actually, in the fall and the summer, is when we go camping for a weekend, because then we often go places where my phone won't work. Mm-hmm. So literally, like the first day, I'm still the first evening, I'm still thinking about everything. But then the next day, I can't access my phone because it's died. I can't charge it. And I don't have reception. And that's the day my brain actually unwinds. And then by Sunday, I'm back. Once we get back into reception, I'm back. So, but that's the time I can actually let my brain unwind. And when I don't have access, time for a whole camping weekend, I try to go for a hike. With my kids, usually. So that's kind of how I do it. I try to just get away from my phone and just be outdoors if at all possible and outside.
We had that too. I love being off the grid camping, and same sort of thing. About after a day of being there, you do start to unwind and just be in yourself and in nature. I will say it was hilarious. We went over Labor Day weekend camping off the grid. And as we were driving back into service, both my husband's phone and my phone were non-stop pinging, like getting all these texts and emails. I'm like, we'll deal with that Monday.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's true. I mean, I and Katie and I both actually love to ski. So just kind of being outside. I think the other thing too, that I think we, because we both know how important it is for us to unwind, we both really support each other when we travel, and we like to travel with our families. And that's also a really good time for us to kind of, even if we're just going somewhere in the United States and you still have service and all of that, we're really respectful of, hey, I don't need an immediate answer from you, so I'm not going to send you 10 emails that's like, Katie, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And I think this is where, when you have kind of a strong team, you don't have to always be on. You can say, okay, for this next week, if anything urgent comes up, can I forward it to you to handle? Right. And that actually is something that a lot of startup CEOs don't do well, is that we know that the company's about you, but not always, and it doesn't have to be. And if you set up, a good system, then you can take some time off.
Right. That's really good. So on the flip side of that, what's your favorite part about entrepreneurship?
So much fun.
We have so much fun. I mean, to be honest, I'm really proud. It's this interesting phenomenon where you think, well, I had this idea, you know, a year or maybe a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And it was nothing. And now it's something, and people are using it and having fun with it and creating something with it.
Yeah.
That's fun to see. I will have to admit, it's really fun to see.
Yeah.
And it's fun to work with great people. I mean, it's fun to you know, to bounce ideas back and forth.
I think it's fun to dictate how, you know, to create the culture that you want to be a part of and that you want to work in. And I think, you know, we've really tried to think about that from the ground up, even with a small team right now. Like, what kind of culture do we want? How do we want to empower, you know, everybody who brings an amazing skill set to the table to do what they're best at? And I feel like that often gets lost in larger organizations. But with startups, I mean, everyone's critical, right?
Yeah.
But that to me is really fun, is really thinking through, okay, so this person's amazing at that. How do we let them do more of that to help the company move forward?
That's interesting.
And if they're doing something that they don't enjoy, do we have resources to bring someone in or have someone take care of that so they can spend more time doing the part they're really good at and where they bring the most value? So we did that actually recently with our CTO. Yeah. We brought in an intern to cover some of the parts of his work that weren't, you know, that someone else can do pretty easily. I also, just a little thought, the culture part I think is really important, and we're actually all going skiing together next week because I'm a ski fanatic, and and it, you know, the relaxing part, your phone doesn't work, but I've gotten some of my best ideas, I think, skiing, just because you do kind of let go and you're not thinking of the little problems you're trying to solve, but you actually think more freely about everything else. Right. So we'll have fun as a team, but B, you know, maybe we'll come up with some great ideas that we won't in the office. So
I love what you're saying about find out what people are good at and let them do more of it. And what that leads me to think, I've been reading so many stats and papers and blogs and things like that on investing in women. And what we're seeing is that women-led and run companies are garnering huge business benefits. They're getting more profit. They're around longer and things like that. And with 2 women co-founders, I'm wondering what your thoughts on that issue are. And I know you're both very involved in that community. So just share kind of what you're doing and why you think this is so important to invest in women.
I think that, I mean, I actually think that we're having that conversation has grown exponentially. When I started in kind of the venture capital world almost 10 years ago, there were very few women in this field. I mean, I would literally go to conferences and people would ask me whose assistant I was, right? And so like that has changed quite a bit. Yeah. And I actually really give credit to the women in this field who have just, you know, not up their game, because we were always totally killing it, up the rhetoric around how we're killing it. So I think that's made a huge difference. You know, I think around the idea that women-led companies are really achieving high results, I think a lot of that actually goes back to culture. One of the things like Katie and I have really done at Baby Page, because we were already kind of doing that in our own life, is realizing that work-life balance, it's all like a continuum, right? Like one doesn't end when you walk into the office and the other one begins. It's kind of fluid. Yeah. Really, really, I think, clear about that. And that has made us more productive. And it's not like, you know, I don't want to be one of those people that say, I work 24 hours a day. I can't, right? I have young kids. Like, we can't do that.
That's not the value we bring. The value is not that we work nonstop. The value is that we're good at what we do when we're working on it. Right. And that's something we focus on. And I think women, I don't know, I saw a quote, you know, I've also been following and we're involved in that, you know, discussion around women CEOs and how effective they are. And I saw, I come back to this quote a lot about, it was something like, if you want something difficult done in a small amount of time, give it to a mom. Or I'm picturing the quote, but you know, and I'm not saying it's just moms, but in our case, we are both moms and we spend a lot of time thinking about moms. Right. And, you know, on the one hand, you could say the mom of a toddler or babies and toddlers is the busiest person, most distracted person. Perhaps they'd be the worst person you'd ever want to hire. And I tend to disagree. I think it's the exact opposite. They tend to become very good at being very effective in a short amount of time, very good at delegating their time, very good at getting, you know, projects finished and moving on to the next one. So we, you know, I think obviously women are just as good at men at really everything. So I think part of it too is that you're seeing these companies be successful because women are, you know, have been given more opportunity in tech in recent years. And they were always good at all those things. They were always good at tech. They were always
the opportunity piece.
You know, not as many of them thought to take that route. And now they are, and many of them are growing up in their careers or retiring, and so there are more mentors to look to, more examples to follow as a woman in tech.
Right.
Well, Katrina, I think you saw, when you were down in Albuquerque, I mean, we have some really strong women in tech that, I think Katie and I both have learned from, and some of them have older kids than we do. So it's interesting to kind of see how they manage that. The Hotrepreneurs conference that you attended, we met you at, Katie's on the board for them, and they're all about empowering women in tech.
Right.
And those kind of organizations, I think, that are really making a difference, just to show other role models, like female role models that are managing it. It's not easy. And, there's days when you don't feel like you're 100% awesome at everything. But
well, and I think that I just love that there's so many, I don't know if we want to call them support groups or mission-driven women that are helping to spread this message with other women in technology, because I know growing up, I didn't even know any of these jobs existed. And I talk about this a lot. I'm from a blue collar family where you're a truck driver or a construction worker, something along that vein. I mean, my sister, who's just a year and a half older, she's like, what do you do again? I don't it's such an invisible sort of thing until there's a final project,
Yeah.
And I think it's so amazing that there's so much support now, and that's probably serving as a catalyst to get more women involved.
I totally agree. My personal story is a little different. Both my parents are PhD physicists.
Okay.
I grew up, there was never a question that I should look into, tech or math and science. That was a part of my world ever since I was a little girl.
Yeah.
Well, I never, and my parents are also, I'm learning kind of over the years, there was never this, oh, you can do it even though you're a girl. There was always, you can do this. You were smart enough to do this.
Wow. Yeah.
And so I credit my parents for that. And I want to try to replicate that with my own kids, but I'm realizing that's not the case for a lot of girls growing up. So because, in the past we didn't have as many examples of women in leadership roles, especially in tech.
Yeah.
It was hard if at home you're also told, well, this may not be a good fit for you because you're a girl. And then you don't have any other, leadership, any role models to look to. It must have been really, really hard. So I think now the home part, I think perhaps is improving. Certainly the visible examples of women in leadership in tech is much different than it was 20 years ago. So I'm hopeful that basically we're moving, forward, and we'll see lots and lots of girls choose those path in tech and grow up in leadership to leadership roles within our community.
I think you're absolutely right. As we wrap up, I would love to know what you each think will be the hot topic or the trend that we'll all be talking about next year at this time.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Sure.
That's a great question.
Yeah, well, I think wearables and drones are still, I think that will just skyrocket. I think we'll be tracking more of everything everything health-wise and everything we're capable of. I think data and information personally will become even more accessible. And I mean, accessing information about yourself, right? To adjust yourself or customize whatever. I think that'll continue to be a trend.
That's interesting. I was just talking with a woman yesterday, Jacqueline Ross, the founder of Revolver, and it's or Revelar is how you pronounce it. And it's a wearable company. And she said, just a couple of years ago when I started this company, wearable was a verb. It was a wearable technology. And now wearable is a noun. It's wearable, So I think that's interesting. Yes. What do you think?
So I think, I'll actually look at it from kind of not about necessarily the industry, but I think, I can see a Time magazine cover that's like the rise of women-led companies. I think I really do. And it's funny because I think a lot of the mainstream media sees this as like a new thing. And when we're like, yeah, thanks for catching up. But, I think that
we've been at this a while, people.
Right. But for the most part, all press is good press, right? Yeah. So I think you're going to see more of that. I think there's going to be a whole study done on why are women-led companies doing so well. It's great. I'll take that. Again, I don't think it's that new or novel, but hey, if it's new or novel for a certain segment, fine.
I'm looking forward to a time when it's no longer news and it'll just be, completely normal that half half of successful companies are led by men and the other half are led by women.
Right.
And a bunch of them are really, really successful.
Well, thank you both for being here. I definitely appreciate you taking the time, and it was fantastic talking to you both.
Thank you so much, Katrina.
Thanks so much for the opportunity.
You're welcome.
Bye.